Hello, I'm Senator Eileen Donoghue, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of Beacon Hill Buzz. Through this program, we try and bring information to the listening public about issues and topics that impact their day-to-day lives. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us as our guest Secretary Jay Ash, the Secretary of Housing Economic Development, and the letters are so long that I'm just going to say Housing and Economic Development. I'm going to shorthand that. Secretary Ash, previously to serving as the Secretary for Governor Baker in his cabinet, served as the City Manager for Chelsea for over 14 years. He has been involved with innovation and development for his entire career, and so we are looking very much forward to having discussions with Secretary Ash today. So welcome, Secretary Ash.
It's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you too, and this is such a timely topic, I think, always is as far as economic development, but you know, you come to this position with such wealth of information and background that we're delighted to have you here to talk about all the things happening on the state level and give us some insights as to what you're up to down there. So
I'd love to. We could spend a couple of hours just talking about what's happening in your district. There's so many things happening in your district.
And
so
that would, thank you, and I think we'll hopefully be able to do that. But maybe for starters, if you can talk to us a little bit about the Baker administration and your goals as it comes to economic development. I know you've been in office now for about a year and a half. You've traveled the length and breadth of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, absorbing all the information, and so I'm just curious on some of your thoughts about that.
I have found cities and especially towns that I didn't know existed.
Yes.
And it's been great, actually. Like you, I've spent a lot of time in my world. I spent a lot of time in my native Chelsea, as you have in your district, and you get to know the district really well. You get to know every block, but to travel out and give them the responsibility to now to travel to 350 other communities, I've gotten to see wonderful things all around the state. And funny, I've lived in Massachusetts all my life, but I keep on falling in love with Massachusetts because of all the wonderful things I see.
There's a lot. We like to say in this area, there's a lot to like about Lowell, but there's a lot to like about a lot of communities across the state.
I may use that. So, so you asked me what our priorities are.
Yeah.
And certainly my shop, Housing and Economic Development, by the way, thank you for explaining my title, but when I said yes to being Housing and Economic Development, I didn't realize that I was also saying yes to banking, insurance, and consumer affairs. So
yes.
You'll recall that at one time my secretariat was actually split up into three, and during various consolidations, I now have three secretaries under one. So I spend a lot of time on banking and insurance and consumer affairs as well. But my love is economic development. I know your love is economic development, and spend a lot of time on that. So Baker administration, together with the legislature, quite frankly, we're working in a bipartisan way, has been working on a concept called Opportunities for All. And so that was the name of our study that we did over a year's period of time, and the name of the economic development bill that you championed through the legislature. And Opportunities for All, we had a challenge. Should we call it Opportunity for All or Opportunities for All? It felt natural to call it opportunity, but what we heard when we talked to people, when we talked to businesses, we talked to institutions, was that it really is more than one opportunity that people or businesses need in order to reach that next step on their own personal chain to prosperity. And so we called it Opportunities for All. We're looking at opportunities to help communities become more vibrant. We're looking at opportunities to help people prosper, and we're hoping that our efforts will help businesses grow. And so those are the three stool legs, if you would, on a healthy economy. And so we've prioritized economic development, as you know, because you've been an advocate for your district, and especially here in Lowell. We talk an awful lot with community leaders about what they want to see happen in their communities. We believe very much that economic development plans should be driven by the community with the state support, as opposed to the state coming down and saying, this shall be the law of the land, and you shall do. And on the business side, we see tremendous growth in Massachusetts, and so we're about trying to help that growth, picking areas, sectors that we can add value to, and really stretch that growth throughout the Commonwealth.
And that's interesting that you bring that up, because I think sometimes people aren't aware of what's happening in Massachusetts in terms of business and growth and jobs, that are coming to the state. And I know you have a bird's eye view of that.
Yeah, it's really incredible. We're in a great period of time here. I asked my staff recently, what's the most important aspect of success? And somebody raised their hand and said hard work. Somebody raised their hand and said vision. I said, no, it's timing. Right? And the timing is great. So Massachusetts is a place that everyone wants to be. And so it's your job and my job to grab as much of the business as we can and then deal with all the effects of that business. That effects include workforce issues. And when you talk about the Baker administration's priorities and yours, workforce, it ultimately comes down to people, right? We want to make sure that people are prosperous. Businesses are about people, and certainly in our communities, we do a lot for people. So we want to make sure that people are prosperous. But it comes down to workforce issues. It comes down to traffic issues. You know, people hate sitting in traffic, but the alternative's worse, not having any traffic at all.
Yes.
And it comes down to being able to continue to innovate. You and I were just at a ribbon cutting for a company that's on the cutting edge of innovation, making very, very tiny, microscopic component parts to something else that's going to be much bigger. It's about constantly innovating. We're leading the way in all those areas.
And that's something, you know, you see that as the real, you know, focus for Massachusetts, or strong suit for Massachusetts innovation.
So we were recently ranked #1 by Bloomberg in innovation throughout the country.
Pretty impressive.
It's very impressive, and you see it here with all the wonderful things, the amazing things that happen at UMass Lowell,
Right.
and we see it around the Commonwealth, in Boston and Cambridge with Harvard and MIT and Northeastern and the others, and outside in places like WPI or the entire UMass system, great community college system that we have, Middlesex Community College up here. Innovation is really our calling card, and it's a great calling card to have, because as long as you're innovating, you're always going to be one step ahead of everybody else and one step closer to the next generation of whatever it is that we're making.
So as you travel around, what are you hearing from companies that they have jobs, they have job growth, but they need the trained workforce as well?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time. I mean, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about public policy, and we both love public policy. I remember a time when I grew up in public policy where I was always thinking about, how can I create more jobs? We got all these people that need jobs. How can I create more jobs? And here in Massachusetts right now, it's a unique period where jobs are actually chasing after people.
Yeah, jobs are coming here.
It's almost like, how do we create more people? I go home and tell my wife that. She says, not in this household, but so the good news is that there are plenty of jobs. I spoke recently at a manufacturing conference. There were 250 people, 250 businesses represented, and I asked for a show of hands. How many people have openings? And about 2/3 of the audience raised their hand. And so we hear it over and over again. I ask businesses all the time, what is the one thing that you worry about for the future of your company, the future of our economy? And they say workforce. Now, that should be a calling card for us as well, because we have, in addition to being #1 in innovation, we have the highest educated workforce in the country. Almost 40% of our population has at least a bachelor's degree, and that's great news. That's great news, but you and I have talked about this, and I've talked to other leaders in gateway cities. Not every person is going to have a bachelor's degree, and so we need to make sure that we have jobs across the spectrum.
Yeah, every level.
Yeah, at every level. So we found ourselves recently, we were at a life sciences company. Typical life sciences company, the job's $130,000. And this life sciences company was talking about jobs at $40,000. And I looked at my assistant looked at me, and we got excited, because there were entry-level jobs in life sciences. You didn't need to be a doctor, you didn't need to be an engineer. You could get in and then move your way through the life sciences company. So making sure that we have jobs available at different
And I think
levels
that's the exciting thing too, because, you know, as you mentioned, not everybody's going to college, but there are good, you know, opportunities that they can start at an entry level and then have a path for growth at, you know, companies. And, you know, it wasn't that long ago that we can remember the truth and the feeling that all manufacturing had left Massachusetts for good and was not coming back. It's different manufacturing, but it's back.
Yeah, it is. So what we saw was there was a period of time where manufacturing went over there. We still had our stronghold in research and development, but people were thinking that they would take whatever was developed in our labs, in our higher education, and it would send overseas to produce something. What we've seen recently, and what we're really trying to capitalize on, is that manufacturing now wants to be close to where the innovation is happening. And the synergy that happens is great. And that's why a place like Lowell, a place like Worcester, a place like Springfield are really set up well to take advantage of the next round of manufacturing. In addition to that, the federal government has prioritized onshoring of manufacturing. And together with the legislature, and you've been a champion of this, we've put aside money for innovation, research and development, and manufacturing, and we're scoring big. The last 3 federal awards for advanced manufacturing, research and development in emerging areas have come to Massachusetts.
Which is great because the competition is intense.
The competition is intense, and it's great because not only are we going to do the research and development, but the research and development is going to lead to the commercialization of products. And one of the reasons that we're having the success is that base that we have in manufacturing to begin with. You know, the last award we received was for revolutionary fibers.
Yep.
So someday our clothing will be able to tell whether we're hot or cold, and we'll turn on or off depending upon whether we need to be heated or cooled.
And it may tell the doctor what's happening with us,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. So we don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
But you think about Lowell, you think about Lawrence, you think about places on the North Shore, Fall River and South Coast, rich history in textiles and
Right.
fabrics. And we're going to make a comeback in those areas, as well as doing things like photonics and flexible electronics and all the things that are happening at UMass Lowell.
Right
now
over
that you and I
right
don't
over the
even-
street.
we can't describe.
We
but
can
exactly.
pronounce them, but that's
Sometimes, yes, yeah, exactly.
You know, when we talk about companies coming, and I think sometimes people wonder, well, how does that happen? Well, I know, Secretary, you know it doesn't happen by accident, and I know you were very much involved in a very competitive process of bringing General Electric to Massachusetts, and you also were involved on a local level of keeping a company like Kronos here.
Yes.
I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, because I'm not sure people really understand the process and the competition that you face, because you're out there competing with states, and
Sure.
maybe you can tell the folks at home about
Competition is fierce, and so other jurisdictions, states, and countries want what we have, and are willing to spend more and more to try to get that. So when we talk to companies, we talk about what their needs are, what we have to offer, and hopefully those align. And we look at incentives that we can give, as much to fend off the competition as to provide incentive for the businesses to come here. And states are writing big checks. We say regularly to companies that if you're looking to get the biggest incentive package, Massachusetts probably isn't the place for you. But if you're looking for the smartest people, the best places to work, a great quality of life. We're number 1 in quality of life. I can go through all these number ones. If you're looking for access to great research institutions and proximity to world-class everything, Massachusetts is the place to be. So yeah, I led a delegation down to Connecticut. After the governor was on the phone with GE, I went down to Connecticut with our team and talked to the GE people about the Massachusetts experience. And just as I was saying, if GE was interested in the highest incentive package, there were other jurisdictions that were offering more. What we offered was really smart people, smart places, a smart business ecosystem, and ultimately a smart company made the right move. And so they are thrilled to be in the middle of things.
You won the bid.
And we all did. I mean, you were helpful yourself. The fact of the matter is that we're working together in a bipartisan spirit,
Yep.
and we're all on the same page. And the legislature has given the administration the tools to then go out and be the pitch. And so we're excited about GE, but I have to tell you that as I sat down with Kronos, which we can call the GE of Lowell if you'd like, but when
Correct, yeah.
right. And when I sat down with Kronos, I didn't want to leave. Just fell in love with the company, fell in love with the people in the company, and really saw, as you did, the impact that Kronos staying here could make on Lowell and in the entire region. And we were just thrilled to be able to work with them to figure out a way to keep them here.
Yeah, it's such an important company, and certainly in the tech industry, and having the headquarters stay in Massachusetts and certainly the greater Lowell area is key. And again, I congratulate you and your shop and the governor for being able to keep these companies here. And it's, you know, sometimes people think, well, they just get, someone writes these companies a big check to come here, and that's not the case, which makes your job even more difficult.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't the case in GE, for example. There's a misnomer out there that we gave a big award to GE. Actually, GE is not getting a single state dollar.
Yeah.
What we did was we figured out, you know, I'd like to say we were kind of clever about this. We figured out how to leverage our assets to benefit GE. In this case, what we're doing is that the GE is going in a publicly owned building. We're owning an asset. GE is going to be receiving a reduced rent. We own the asset, and that asset is going to appreciate. That asset is in one of the hottest areas, not only in the United States, but in the country. So in fact, the investment that we're making should pay off handsomely for us down the road, while we get the benefit of all the tax revenue, and more importantly, the innovation. You know, innovation begets innovation, and GE has really embraced that in Boston, and Kronos has convinced us that they're going to embrace it here. So one other thing I'd say about business development is it's almost as much about relationships as it is about incentives. And it's been my experience over 30 years that developing the relationship and working on the relationship first is important. And I will tell you that as I sat with Kronos, they had nothing but good things to say about the way they had been treated in Lowell. And that's absolutely critical, because if they had a bad experience, then they're going to find someplace else, and there are plenty of other places. So I congratulate everybody in Lowell.
Yeah, I kudos to all of the administration, the local government, the manager, the mayor, and everybody who made that happen too, because it is a team effort. We've seen that local, state, federal, but we all have to work together in a bipartisan way, as you said. You know, you mentioned the economic development bill that the governor signed into law just a few short weeks ago. Over $1 billion in that economic development bill that gives tools to the administration. And again, this was an effort to work together and give tools to the administration that they felt they needed in order to grow our economy, grow jobs, educate folks, and provide infrastructure. But I'm wondering, there's one component that's really large in it, MassWorks. I wonder
you're
if
going to pitch me for MassWorks money?
I'm going to talk about that.
On public television, you're going to pitch me for MassWorks money.
MassWorks, I thought maybe you could explain what MassWorks is and what tools it gives the administration, what kind of opportunities you see as far as. So MassWorks took up half that bill, $500 million?
$500 million. So, MassWorks is the governor's favorite program. It's his favorite program because it allows us to do what we love to do, which is to help municipal officials help themselves. And MassWorks is a classic incentive program. The government will provide the infrastructure necessary for the private investment to then follow. In the private investment, we'd like to see the private investment follow really quickly. So we are supporting business development, we're supporting housing development in communities around the state. And what happens, especially in middle to small communities, is that the cost of infrastructure is overwhelming. Even though the benefit to having that investment is going to be significant, the initial costs, the upfront costs, are overwhelming. So what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll provide money to communities to repair streets, to create new water lines, to areas to deal with sewer issues, traffic signalization, and the like, in return for private entities saying, yeah, no, we're going to invest. So Lowell has seen the Hamilton Canal. We've been doing MassWorks grants for Hamilton Canal, and right now, as you know, Lowell has an application into supported development on Thorndike Street, which is a conversion of an old mill. And those are the projects that we love.
Yeah.
As you know, and you were very supportive of it, sometimes in communities there are opportunities that don't have the investment right behind it, but you know that the investment will come. And so we've been created a new fund that will allow us to go out to places that don't have the reputation that Lowell has, and doesn't have the opportunity to build upon everything that you already have here. But we can tell that if you just make some small investment, there is an opportunity to bring in developers. So we have the best of both worlds now, thanks to that $1 billion plan. $1 billion is a lot of money. It's a lot of responsibility, but we have a lot of opportunity, and we'll be able to capitalize.
And there's a lot of demand for it, but I thought I'd mention too, and obviously Lowell has benefited and looks to partner with the state going forward. It's so critically important to the future, and as you say, bringing more development, more jobs, leveraging private dollars. Let's face it.
Yes,
and
exactly.
but some of the small towns also, and so I'd be remiss if I didn't pitch a couple more just to put them on your radar. I know without not to the exclusion of, but just a couple that you think of. A town that wants to improve their center, and it needs that bit of, whether it's sewer and those things that aren't that sexy or exciting, but it's necessary in order to bring the private development. And so, some towns come to mind, town of Groton, town of Tingsboro, just to name a few.
Any just random towns?
They just happen to be in my district, but I just thought I'd mention them to you.
Yeah, well, we make sure that we meet communities at where they are. In fact, I will tell you that as I travel around the state, I see some communities that try to be what they can't be. And by that I mean that there'll be smaller communities that hire consultants who come in, and the consultants come in and try to turn them into Boston. And I'm always the skunk in the woodpile, sort of, to say, do you really think
Yeah.
you can do that. And so we understand that, for instance, GE or Kronos is not going to go into every community.
Right.
But there's always a project to every community that's important to that community.
Yeah.
So while it's great to chase after the big projects, we do recognize and are very supportive of smaller communities, especially towns, that have things like town centers. Or I'll tell you what I've fallen in love with, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I've fallen in love with industrial parks.
I've heard you say that, yeah.
And so, there was a time when I was a city manager at Chelsea that we were pushing the old industry out so that we could build shiny, gleaming new high-rises, and had some success at doing that. So I came to the job not really valuing industrial parks, and as I got further and further away from Boston, and I started to see more and more how important industrial parks were to local and regional economies, a light went off, and I said, boy, we have to do more for that. So again, thanks to you and the members of the legislature, we have a fund that will allow us to support industrial parks. Not sexy at all, but in fact really good employers and really stabilizing agents for local and regional economies.
Solid place for jobs.
Yeah, solid place for jobs, right.
Maybe switching gears just a little bit, because another part of your secretariat and the bill, maybe you can speak to. One of the things we see in Massachusetts is housing and the cost of housing for workforce housing for folks, whether they're all up and down the spectrum of the economic ladder, especially young people trying to get started,
That's right.
trying to keep them here. I'm wondering if you can share your thoughts on the housing issue and how the state in your shop is approaching it.
Yeah, housing is an important part of what we do, and I mentioned earlier the three stools, the three legs of a stool, and housing is one of those. And what we see is that we have communities that have housing challenges, but the challenges aren't always the same. So I'm living proof that one size doesn't fit all, and a one-size approach to a community's housing need doesn't fit all. So we're trying to meet the needs in different areas. In some communities, there's need for more affordable housing, the traditional affordable housing for low-income folks. And in other communities, there's a need for another type of housing, which is what we're calling housing that's affordable. It's the next rung up. It's that workforce housing. It may be for the local teacher or the police officer or the firefighter to be able to afford to live in the community where they're working, or in some cases, people who just got out of college and are trying to get started.
And those are the things I hear about in some of the towns I represent. People who grew up there, who want to stay in the town, who want to work there, just can't afford to live there. So,
it's
your
very
thoughts on
important.
that.
Yeah, so we have, unfortunately, the need to cut budgets, and we've been doing that for almost the 2 years we've been in now. So I'm on my 6th budget cutting exercise. It's my least favorite part of the job. But even with that budget cutting exercise, the governor has prioritized, with the support of the legislature, increasing the amount of money that we spend on housing development. So our budget for housing development is actually up 10%. It's a recognition by us that housing is an important component to stabilizing communities and allowing us to take advantage of the great growth that we have potentially. So we are doing more on the affordable housing. We're going into communities, gateway cities especially, and saying, how can we help you transform mill buildings? How can we help create opportunities for our workforce to live there? How can we create opportunities for people to prosper by providing more housing? And then we're going out to other places that are looking to also develop that next level of housing up, and looking for opportunities to do that as well. So we have money available. We have new programs that we've updated. The Housing Development Incentive Program is a popular program, and we've increased the amount of subsidy that we would provide. That brings market rate housing to gateway cities, and that's an important aspect as well. So we recognize and prioritize housing development, and know that it's important for the future of our economy.
Yeah, so we have the jobs, they have to live somewhere. The workers have to live somewhere, and
exactly.
that's so you're not taking a one focus approach, but looking across all the needs.
And the interesting thing about housing, especially as you're talking about workers living in housing, is that I get a lot of questions about how to support downtowns, how to revitalize downtowns, and my answer is always build market rate housing. That's the first thing, right? Bring people with disposable income into downtowns, and then they will go out to eat at the local restaurants. The local restaurants will be successful, and the local restaurants will encourage retailers to then move in. We're not going to fight the retail battle with the giants by starting with retail, but if you can get a base of people, and this is what you're doing up here, if you can get a base of people that have disposable income, especially millennials, people who want to be outside of their units later at night, and create that activity, create that buzz. We've seen it over and over again that it can make a difference. So housing starts, interestingly enough, housing starts the economic development transformation of a downtown.
The other part that the billion, we'll call it the $1 billion bill, right? Focused on too had to do with job training.
Yes.
And how do you see that as playing forward in the future?
So every business I go to, I ask the same question. What do you worry about for the future of your business, and what do you worry about for the future of our economy? And every business has said the same thing to me. And I was expecting it to be regulations or taxes or competition
and
or other things.
healthcare.
And it was workforce. It was workforce. And again, people raised their hand and said they had workforce. So we recognize that for the future of our economy, but also at the end of the day, we're interested in people. For the benefit of people, we need to do more around workforce training. So with the help of the legislature, the governor has prioritized more and more funding to support training opportunities. Opportunities for all is the name of our effort, and training is a great way to provide somebody with a new opportunity. And so we have more funding available to partner with community colleges, to partner with vocational schools, to partner with comprehensive high schools. And the cost of equipment for training is enormous, right? And so what we are doing is we're telling schools that we will provide you with a grant, but almost as importantly, there's a steady stream of funding now available. So if you can think out, if you can envision what you want to do, we call it plan the work and then work the plan. If you can plan the work about what you need in order to be able to better educate the young people you're with, we will be there for you. And then if it's not young people, it's adult learners. We are also partnering with training centers and providing them with the same opportunities.
It's unbelievable. I think we've run out of time.
Really?
There's just so much to talk about.
There is. Well, thank you for all your work. And
Thank you. I can't thank you enough for coming here and sharing your views with all of our listeners on Beacon Hill Buzz. We look forward to working together in the future and partnering on all these great things. You have a lot on your plate, but thanks so
It's
much
always
for
great
the
to
work
see you.
you do.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, and thank you to all the viewers for tuning into this episode of Beacon Hill Buzz with Secretary Jay Ash. And let me remind you again, if you have any questions or problems whatsoever, please do not hesitate to contact my office. You can call me on the phone, 617-722-1630, or email me at eileen.donoghue@masenate.gov. Thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Beacon Hill Buzz, if not before.